The sound wasn't loud, just a dry, scraping noise, metal against plaster. But in the silence of the afternoon, it sounded like a scream. I stood in the doorway of the living room, a half-folded towel still in my hands. David, my son, was standing on the vintage oak step stool, the one his father had built for me when I was pregnant with him, so I wouldn't have to reach too high for the cupboards. He wasn't reaching for a cupboard now. His hands were gripping the heavy, gilded frame of the portrait that had hung above the fireplace for 12 years. "David?" My voice was calm. I made sure of that. I've learned that when your heart starts hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird, the most important thing to do is keep your voice steady. He didn't look down. He shifted his weight, grunting slightly as he lifted the frame off the hook. "Just a second, Mom. What are you doing with your father?" He lowered the portrait. For a moment, Arthur's face captured in oil paints, smiling that half-smile he gave when he knew a joke I didn't hovered in midair. Then, David set it on the floor, facing the wall. Arthur was looking at the baseboards now. "We're just updating the room," David said, wiping his hands on his jeans. He finally looked at me. His eyes were the same shade of blue as Arthur's, but they didn't hold the same warmth. They were flat, practical. "Jessica bought this incredible abstract piece. It's going to really open up the space, make it feel younger." Jessica, my daughter-in-law. She was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch, a small, satisfied tightening. Next to her lay a large, flat package wrapped in brown paper. The replacement. I walked into the room. My legs felt heavy, as if I were wading through water. I looked at the space above the fireplace. Where the portrait had been, there was now a rectangle of pale, pristine paint. The rest of the wall had faded slightly over the years, sunlight, smoke from the fireplace, life living itself out. But that rectangle was untouched. It looked like a scar, or a ghost. "That portrait has hung there since the funeral," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stated the fact. It's the center of this house. Jessica finally looked up. "It's a bit heavy, don't you think? Ideally, a living room should flow. That picture just stares at you." "He is your father," I said to David, ignoring her. "And this is his house." David sighed. It was a long, exaggerated sound, the kind a parent makes when a toddler refuses to put on their shoes. He stepped down from the stool and picked up the brown package. "Mom, we talked about this. We need to modernize. If we're going to live here, we can't live in a museum." "I am not a museum curator, David. I am your mother, and I live here too." He paused. He was tearing the paper off the new painting. I could see flashes of chaotic gray and angry red. "Yeah, but things are different now," he muttered. I took a step closer. "Put him back." The room went still. Jessica stopped scrolling. The air conditioner hummed, a low, indifferent drone. David looked at me, his jaw set tight. He looked so much like Arthur when he was stubborn. But Arthur used his stubbornness to fix things, not to break them. "No," David said. "Excuse me?" He dropped the wrapping paper on the floor. I said, "No, we're not putting it back." "It's depressing, Mom. Every time I walk in here, I feel like I'm being judged by a ghost. He built this fireplace," I whispered. "He laid these floors. And he's gone!" David's voice rose, cracking slightly. He took a step toward me, not threatening, but looming. He was tall now, broad. He took up space that used to belong to his father. "Look," he said, his tone shifting from anger to a cold, condescending explanation. "We're paying the utilities now. We're handling the maintenance. We're doing you a favor by staying here so you're not alone. I never asked you to stay." "You need us," Jessica chimed in from the couch. Her voice was light, like she was discussing the weather. "Let's be honest." I looked from her to David. "I want the portrait back on the wall. Now." David let out a harsh laugh. He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. Then he looked me dead in the eye and delivered the sentence that would end the life I thought I had. "Stop acting like it's your house, Mom." He gestured around the room at the walls Arthur painted, the floors I polished, the life we built. "It's ours now. You're just living in it." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. It pressed against my eardrums. I looked at the pale rectangle on the wall. I looked at Arthur's face, turned toward the floorboards, and then I looked at my son. I didn't scream. I didn't slap him. I simply tightened my grip on the towel in my hand until my knuckles turned white. "I see," I said softly. David turned his back to me and lifted the abstract painting. "Glad we cleared that up. Hand me the level, Jess?" I turned around and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard the sound of the new frame scraping against the wall, covering the ghost of the man who built it all. They thought the conversation was over. They thought I was defeated. I walked into the kitchen, placed the towel on the counter, and looked at my reflection in the window. I looked older than I felt, but my eyes were dry. David was right about one thing. Things were different now, but he was wrong about whose house it was. And he was about to find out exactly how wrong he was. That evening, the living room looked like a stranger's mouth. The new painting hung there, a chaotic splash of aggressive red and muddy gray. Jessica called it postmodern vibrancy. I called it a bruise. I sat in my usual armchair, the wingback leather one Arthur used to read in. From the kitchen, the sounds of celebration drifted in. The pop of a cork, the clatter of wine glasses, the high-pitched, airy laugh Jessica used when she felt she had won something. They were toasting. To the new look, to the fresh start, I didn't join them. I wasn't invited. Instead, I stared at the floorboards near the fireplace. There was a faint, rectangular outline in the dust where Arthur's portrait had rested for an hour before David carried it away. He hadn't told me where he put it. He just said, "I stored it safely, Mom. Don't worry." Stored. You store winter tires. You store old tax returns. You don't store the man who built the roof over your head. I stood up. My knees popped a sound that seemed too loud in the sudden quiet of the room as the laughter in the kitchen died down. I needed to find him. I checked the hall closet first. Coats. Jessica's trench coat pushed my wool peacoat to the far edge of the rack. Nothing. I checked the spare room. Boxes of their things, labeled fragile and urgent, stacked high against the wall. Nothing. My chest tightened. A cold, hard knot formed right below my ribs. I opened the door to the garage. The air was stale, smelling of gasoline and damp concrete. I flicked on the fluorescent light. It hummed and flickered, casting long, twitching shadows. And there he was. They hadn't wrapped him. They hadn't covered him. My son, my David, whom Arthur had taught to ride a bike, to shave, to be a man, had leaned his father's portrait against the lawnmower. The gilded frame was touching the dirty concrete floor. A spiderweb, thin and silky, was already stretching from the mower's handle to Arthur's forehead. I walked over slowly. I fell to my knees, not in prayer, but in necessity. My hand trembled as I reached out and wiped the web away. The oil paint was cold under my fingertips. His eyes still held that secret joke, but down here, in the dust and the dark, it didn't look like a smile anymore. It looked like pity. "I'm sorry," I whispered. My voice cracked. "Just once. I'm so sorry I let them touch you." I wanted to lift him up, to carry him back into the house, march into the living room, and smash that hideous red bruise off the wall, but I didn't. I am 64 years old. I cannot physically fight two people who have decided I am invisible. And if I brought him back up now, they would just move him again. Or worse. So I did the only thing I could. I found an old drop cloth, clean, soft cotton. I wrapped the frame carefully, tucking the corners like I used to tuck David into bed. I cleared a space on the high shelf, moving the gardening tools aside. I placed Arthur there, up high, facing out, watching over the garage. When I walked back into the house, David was coming out of the kitchen. He held a glass of red wine. He stopped when he saw me. He saw the smudge of garage dust on the knee of my trousers. He knew. For a second, a flicker of something passed over his face. Guilt? Shame? No, it was annoyance. The annoyance of a child caught doing something they knew was wrong but didn't want to apologize for. "Mom," he said, his voice tight, "you shouldn't be out there. It's cold." "I found him," I said. David sighed, swirling the wine in his glass. "I told you, I stored it. We're going to organize the garage next weekend. I just put it there for now, against the lawnmower. It's a painting, Mom. It's not him. You need to stop attaching so much heaviness to physical objects." He took a sip of wine. Jessica and I were thinking, since we're doing updates, maybe we should look at the dining room next. That chandelier is a bit of a hazard. And the china cabinet takes up too much space. The china cabinet, where I kept my mother's wedding plates, where Arthur hid my anniversary gifts. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He wasn't just changing the decor, he was erasing the history. He was stripping the house of everything that made it mine, piece by piece, until the only thing left that didn't fit the modern aesthetic was me. "Do whatever you want, David," I said softly. He blinked, surprised by my surrender. "Really? Okay, that's great. Thanks for being reasonable, Mom." He smiled, a relieved, victorious smile. He thought he had won. He thought I was giving up. I walked past him toward the stairs. "Good night, David." "Night, Mom." I climbed the stairs, listening to him walk back to the kitchen to tell Jessica the good news. "The old lady is folding. The house is ours." I went into my bedroom and locked the door. I didn't go to sleep. I walked to my desk and pulled out a fresh notepad. I sat down, uncapped my pen, and wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote, Item 1, Portrait of Arthur, removed without consent, damaged by negligence. Value, sentimental, priceless. Market, $2,500. Item 2, verbal claim of ownership. It's ours now, witnessed by myself. I wasn't giving up. I was taking inventory. The takeover didn't happen with a bang. It happened with a whisper. It happened in the kitchen drawers. It happened in the linen closet. It happened in the air itself. 3 days after the portrait incident, I walked into the kitchen to make my morning coffee. For 40 years, I have used the same mug. It's ceramic, painted with faded bluebells, chipped slightly at the rim. Arthur bought it for me at a craft fair in Vermont on our 10th anniversary. I reached for the cupboard above the sink. My hand met empty air. The shelf was full, but my mug was gone. In fact, all the mugs were gone. The mismatched collection of travel souvenirs, world's best mom cups, and the heavy stoneware Arthur loved all vanished. In their place sat rows of pristine, identical white porcelain cylinders. Minimalist, cold, soulless. I stood there, blinking. "Jessica?" I called out. She walked in, wearing silk pajamas, holding a green juice. She looked fresh, bright, and completely unbothered. "Good morning. Did you sleep well? Where are my mugs?" She smiled, a patient, tight-lipped smile reserved for slow children. "Oh, we did a little decluttering last night." David and I felt the kitchen was looking a bit chaotic. Visual noise, you know? So we donated the old ones. My breath hitched. "You donated them? To Goodwill. Someone will get great use out of them." She opened the fridge. "Besides, these new ones are bone china, much more elegant. They stack better. That blue mug was a gift from your father-in-law." She shrugged, not looking at me. "It was chipped, Mom. Bacteria gets trapped in cracked ceramic. Honestly, we did you a favor." I looked at the trash bin in the corner. It was empty. They hadn't just donated them, they had erased them. I didn't make coffee. The thought of drinking from those white, sterile cylinders made my stomach turn. I went to the living room. The heavy velvet curtains, deep burgundy, which Arthur said made the room feel like a warm embrace, were gone. In their place hung sheer, flimsy gray panels. The light poured in, harsh and unforgiving. It bleached the warmth out of the wood floors. "Do you like it?" David walked in, buttoning his shirt for work. "Much more natural light. Opens up the space." "It echoes," I said. And it did. Without the heavy fabric to absorb the sound, our voices bounced off the walls. Thin, hollow. "You'll get used to it," he said, patting my shoulder. A pat, not a hug. "By the way, Mom, we're having some contractors come by on Thursday to look at the master bath." I froze. The master bath. My bathroom. Connected to the bedroom I still slept in. Why? It's outdated. The pink tile is, well, it's 1980s. We want to rip it out. Put in slate. A rainfall shower. That is my bathroom, David. I use that tub every night. He sighed. The same sigh from the living room. "Mom, we're investing in the property value. Eventually this house is going to need to be, market ready. We might as well enjoy the upgrades now." Market ready. The word hung in the air like smoke. He wasn't just modernizing the house for them to live in. He was preparing it to be sold. And he hadn't even asked me. "I am not dead yet," I said. My voice was low, trembling with a rage I was trying to swallow. David looked annoyed. "God, stop being so dramatic. Nobody said you were dying. We're just trying to make the place livable." Livable. as if the life I had built here, the life I had shared with his father, was unlivable. As if we had been living in squalor until he and his wife arrived with their beige paint and bone china to save us. He checked his watch. I gotta run. Don't wait up for dinner. Jess and I are trying that new sushi place. He left. Jessica followed him to the door for a kiss, then went upstairs to her home office, my old sewing room, and closed the door. I was alone, in a house that smelled of ocean breeze, plug-in air fresheners instead of lavender and old books, in a kitchen filled with strangers' dishes, in a living room that echoed. I walked to the trash bin outside, just to check. I lifted the lid, and there, at the bottom, buried under coffee grounds and eggshells, I saw it. The handle of my Bluebell mug, broken. They hadn't donated it. They had smashed it. I didn't reach for it. It was too late. I let the lid fall shut with a heavy thud. I went back inside. I didn't cry. Tears were for people who still had hope that things were an accident. This was no accident. This was an eviction. Slow, deliberate, cruel. I walked to my notepad. Item 3. Personal property kitchenware destroyed and disposed of without permission. Lie about donation noted. Item 4. Unauthorized renovation plans for master suite. Item 5. Intent to sell, market ready, verbalized. I put the pen down. I needed to stop just listing things. I needed to know exactly where I stood. Tomorrow, I wouldn't go to the grocery store. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank. I didn't go to the bank immediately. First, I needed to remember what I was fighting for. That night, unable to sleep in the silence of my room, I walked down the hallway. The floorboards didn't creak anymore. David had hired a man to come in and tighten everything last week. Silence is luxury, he had said, but I missed the creak. The third board from the top of the stairs used to groan whenever Arthur came home late from a shift. It was my signal that he was safe. Now, the house was silent, like a tomb. I went down to the living room. Moonlight filtered through the thin, gray curtains, casting pale bars across the floor. I walked to the fireplace. David had talked about painting the stone white. Whitewashing, he called it, to make it pop. I reached out and ran my hand over the rough, cool surface of the river rock. Suddenly, I wasn't 64 anymore. I was 28. My hands weren't spotted with age. They were raw and blistered from mixing mortar. It was 1,985. We couldn't afford a contractor for everything, so we did the finishing work ourselves. I saw Arthur, shirtless in the July heat, hauling these stones one by one from the back of his old pickup truck. He was sweating, his hair plastered to his forehead, but he was grinning. "This is the heart, Mary," he had told me, wiping grit off his cheek with the back of his hand. "Walls can fall, roofs can leak, but this hearth, this isn't going anywhere." We ate sandwiches on the unfinished subfloor that day. No furniture, just sawdust and the smell of wet pine. He pulled me close, his arm heavy and solid around my shoulders. "I promise you," he whispered against my hair, "as long as I'm standing, you will never be cold in this house. You will never be without a roof. This is your kingdom, our kingdom." I had corrected him. "Yours," he insisted. "I just built it. You make it a home." I blinked, and the memory dissolved. I was back in the gray light of 2024. The hearth was cold. The gas insert David installed had a remote control but no warmth, and Arthur wasn't standing anymore. I looked around the room. David saw square footage. Jessica saw investment potential. They looked at these walls and saw dollar signs, equity, a stepping stone to a bigger mansion in the suburbs. They didn't know that inside the drywall of the entryway, there was a message Arthur wrote in permanent marker before we sealed it up. "Arthur loves Mary, 1,985. They didn't know that the scratches on the doorframe were from measuring David's height every birthday, painted over now by 3 coats of eggshell white. They were living inside my love story, and they were treating it like a hotel flip. A sudden flash of anger burned through the nostalgia. It wasn't just disrespect, it was a violation. Arthur didn't break his back hauling these stones, so his son could tell me to stop acting like it's my house. He didn't work double shifts to pay the mortgage, so his daughter-in-law could throw his mugs in the trash. "You promised I'd never be cold," I whispered to the empty room. I pulled my cardigan tighter around me. "I'm cold now, Arthur, but I'm not frozen." I walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. David's leased BMW was parked right in the center, blocking the path to the garage where Arthur's portrait sat in the dark. They thought they were the owners because they were louder, because they were younger, because they held the remote control to the fireplace. But they forgot one thing. They forgot who laid the foundation. And you cannot tear down a fortress if you don't know where the cornerstones are buried. I went back upstairs. I didn't go to bed. I went to the closet and pulled out the old metal lockbox Arthur kept on the top shelf. I hadn't opened it in years. I knew the combination by heart. The 14th of July, 2082. Our wedding anniversary. The tumblers clicked, a sound louder than the silence. Inside, the papers were yellowed but crisp. The deed, the will, and a separate, thinner envelope I had almost forgotten about. One labeled, "In case of emergency." I held it in my hand. It felt heavy. I didn't open it yet. I would take it to the bank tomorrow. I would let the professionals read the fine print. But as I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, I finally slept. For the first time since David took the portrait down, I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. I felt like the landlord, and rent was due. I left the house at 9 a.m. sharp. I told them I was going to the market. I didn't. I went to the law offices of Henderson and Miller. Robert Henderson had been Arthur's golf partner for 20 years. He was retired now, but his son James handled our estate. When I laid the papers on his mahogany desk, James looked at me over his glasses. "Mrs. Miller," he said gently, "I can review the deed again, but nothing has changed since Arthur passed. The house is in your name. David is the beneficiary upon your death, not before." "And if they want to sell it?" I asked. "They can't, not without your signature." He paused, tapping a pen against the file. "Unless what? Unless you are declared incompetent, incapacitated, unable to manage your own affairs." The room went cold. "I see," I said. I took the papers back. I didn't tell James why I asked. I didn't want him to pity me. "Thank you, James. Give my best to your father." I drove home slowly. The "unless" echoed in my head like a warning bell. When I pulled into the driveway, it was barely 11 a.m. David's car was there, Jessica's too. They usually worked until 5. I turned off the engine and sat in the silence for a moment. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I entered through the back door, the mudroom entrance that leads into the laundry room, right off the kitchen. The hinges there were well-oiled, silent. I heard their voices before I saw them. They were in the kitchen. The smell of roasted coffee, my coffee, brewed in their fancy machine, drifted out. "Perfect timing, honestly," Jessica was saying. Her voice was low, businesslike. "With the market peaking this spring, we could get maybe $850 for it, especially with the renovations." "I know," David replied. He sounded tired. "But Mom is. She's stubborn, Jess. You saw her with that damn painting. She's attached." "It's not just attachment, David. It's decline." I froze. My hand, reaching for the doorknob of the laundry room, stopped in midair. "Decline?" David asked. "Come on," Jessica said. I could hear the click of her nails on the granite counter. She was crying over a broken mug yesterday. She was talking to the wall in the living room last night. I heard her whispering to herself about cornerstones. She's hoarding old junk in the garage. My blood ran cold. They were watching me. Every moment of grief, every moment of nostalgia, they were twisting it. They were taking my love for this house and painting it as madness. "I don't know." David hesitated. "She seems sharp enough." "Does she?" Jessica pressed. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, but in the quiet house, it was crystal clear. She forgot where the coffee mugs were, David. She didn't recognize her own kitchen. She's confused. It's unsafe for her to be in a big house like this alone. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying Sunny Meadows isn't a bad option. It's assisted living, not a nursing home. They have activities, structure. It would be safer for her. And we could use the power of attorney to handle the sale. For her benefit, of course. To pay for her care. Power of attorney." The phrase hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "She'd never agree to go," David said. "She won't have to agree if Dr. Evans thinks she's slipping," Jessica replied smoothly. "If we document these episodes, the outbursts over the painting, the confusion, the talking to dead people." I stepped back. My heel hit the rubber mat of the mudroom floor. A soft thud. "Shh," Jessica hissed. "Did you hear that? It's probably the wind." Or the house settling? Go check. I didn't wait. I quietly opened the back door, slipped out, and closed it softly behind me. My heart was hammering against my ribs, harder than when I saw the portrait on the floor. This wasn't just greed anymore. This was a trap. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to take my mind, my dignity, my freedom. They were building a case against my sanity, brick by brick, using my own grief as the mortar. I walked around to the front of the house. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my hair. I straightened my spine. I unlocked the front door loudly. I slammed it shut. "Hello?" I called out, my voice bright, cheerful, steady. "I'm back." The market was absolute chaos. David appeared in the hallway. He looked pale. Guilty. "Mom, you're back early." "Oh, just beat the traffic," I said, walking past him into the kitchen where Jessica stood. She was studying me, like a scientist looking at a specimen under a microscope, searching for cracks. "Hi, Mary," she said. "How are you feeling today? Any headache? Confusion?" I looked her dead in the eye. I smiled. The coldest smile I have ever smiled in my life. "I feel fantastic, Jessica. Clear as a bell. In fact, I've never seen things more clearly than I do right now." She blinked, unsettled. She didn't know that I had the deed in my safe. She didn't know I had visited James Henderson. And she didn't know that the senile old woman she was planning to commit to a home was about to declare war. I walked to the fridge and poured myself a glass of water. My hand didn't shake. Not even a little. Document that, I thought. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. It wasn't an Amazon delivery. It was Martha. Martha and I have known each other since 1988. We raised our sons together, traded casserole recipes, and sat side by side in the church pew for 3 decades. She knew this house almost as well as I did. When I opened the door, her face lit up. She held a Tupperware container. "I made too much lasagna, Mary. Thought you and the kids might want some." "Martha, come in," I said, stepping back. She stepped into the foyer, wiping her feet on the mat. Then she looked up. Her smile faltered. She looked at the gray curtains, the bare walls where the family photos used to hang, the sterile, echoey emptiness of the hallway. "Oh," she said, "you've changed things." Before I could answer, Jessica materialized from the kitchen. "Hi, you must be Martha." "I'm Jessica, David's wife." She wiped her hands on a towel, smiling that bright, practiced smile. "So nice of you to stop by. We're in the middle of a huge reorganization. Mom was just feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the clutter, weren't you, Mom?" She looked at me, eyebrows raised, daring me to contradict her. "It's certainly different," Martha said, her voice polite but cool. She walked into the living room. Her eyes went straight to the fireplace, to the ghost on the wall. "Where is Arthur?" she asked. The room went quiet. "Where is the portrait?" Martha repeated, turning to Jessica. "That was painted by a local artist. It's always been there." Jessica let out a small, sympathetic sigh. She walked over and touched Martha's arm gently. "I know, it's hard for everyone, but Mom was finding it distressing. She was talking to it, Martha. At night, we thought it was best for her mental health to store it away for a while." My hands clenched at my sides. Distressing, talking to it. She was planting the seeds. She was watering the lie right in front of me. Martha looked at Jessica. Then she looked at me. She didn't look at me with pity, like David did. She looked at me with the sharp, assessing gaze of a woman who had raised 4 boys and buried 2 husbands. "Mary?" she asked. "Is that true? Did you want it down?" I looked at Jessica. I saw the threat in her eyes, the silent warning. "Play along, or we call the doctor." Then I looked at Martha, and I smiled. A calm, lucid smile. "Jessica worries too much," I said smoothly. "You know how young people are. They think grief is a disease that needs to be cured with beige paint." Martha's eyes narrowed slightly. She looked back at the empty wall, then at the postmodern red splash that replaced Arthur. "Well," Martha said, turning back to Jessica, "it's certainly a choice." She turned her back on Jessica, a subtle, beautiful snub, and faced me. "How are you really, Mary? You look tired." "I'm just observing, Martha," I said, "just watching the changes." Jessica checked her watch. "Mom, didn't you say you needed to rest? Dr. Evans said naps were important for your cognitive function." I hadn't seen Dr. Evans in 6 months, but I didn't fight it. "Maybe you're right," I said. "Martha, thank you for the lasagna." Martha handed me the container. Her hand lingered on mine. A squeeze, firm, warm. "I'll see you at Sunday service?" she asked. "Oh, Mom might not be up for that this week," Jessica interjected quickly. "Crowds can be confusing for her lately." Martha ignored her. She held my gaze. "I'll save you a seat, Mary, right next to me, like always." "I'll be there," I said. Martha turned to leave. At the door, she stopped and looked at the pile of boxes in the hallway, my books, destined for donation. She looked at Jessica, then whispered loud enough for the air to carry it. "Be careful with those books, dear. Mary has read every single one. She remembers every plot twist. She's never been the type to forget who the villain is." Then she closed the door. Jessica stood there, her smile gone, her jaw tight. She knew Martha hadn't bought the act, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her confidence. "She's nosy," Jessica muttered, turning on her heel. "We should probably change the locks, just in case she tries to just walk in." I watched her walk away. They could paint the walls, they could hide the mugs, they could lie to the neighbors, but they couldn't fool everyone. Martha was my witness, and Sunday was 3 days away. I had 3 days to prepare. I looked at the lasagna in my hands. It was still warm. It felt like ammunition. That night, the house was quiet. David and Jessica had gone out to a dinner party. Networking, Jessica called it. Building bridges. They left me with a frozen meal and a reminder to not wait up. As soon as their headlights swept away from the driveway, I moved. I didn't go to the kitchen. I went to my old sewing room now, Jessica's home office. The door was shut, but not locked. They didn't lock doors because they didn't respect my privacy enough to think I'd dare enter. The room smelled of laser printer toner and that sharp, chemical scent of new carpet. My sewing machine was gone. My fabric stash, years of silk, wool, and linen, replaced by metal filing cabinets. I walked to the desk. It was cluttered. Invoices, blueprints for the bathroom renovation, and a stack of envelopes with red stamps. Urgent, past due, final notice. I picked up the top one. It was a credit card statement in David's name. Balance, $42,000. Minimum payment missed. I picked up the next one. A letter from a bank in New York. Foreclosure warning on their apartment. I picked up a third. A failed business loan for Jessica's consulting firm. My hands didn't shake. They went cold. They weren't modernizing my house because they cared about interior design. They weren't trying to send me to Sunny Meadows because they were worried about my health. They were broke. They were drowning. And my house, my paid-off, mortgage-free, Riverstone fortress, was their life raft. But to steer the raft, they had to throw the captain overboard. I put the papers back exactly as I found them. A millimeter to the left, just enough to look untouched. I walked back to my bedroom. I pulled out the metal lockbox again. I took out the envelope Arthur had labeled, "In case of emergency." I sat on the edge of the bed. The bedside lamp cast a warm, yellow circle on the duvet. I opened the seal. The paper made a sharp tearing sound. Inside, there wasn't a sentimental letter. Arthur wasn't a man of flowery words. He was a man of logistics. It was a document. Durable power of attorney and advance healthcare directive. Dated 5 years ago. Notarized. I remembered the day we signed these. It was right after Arthur's first heart scare. He had grabbed my hand in the lawyer's parking lot and said, "Mary, if I go first, people will look at you and see a widow. They'll think you're weak. We need to make sure you're bulletproof." I scanned the pages. I read the clause regarding incapacitation. This was the weapon David and Jessica were trying to forge. If they could prove I was incompetent, the confusion, the talking to walls, they could trigger the clause that transferred control of my assets to my guardian. My eyes scanned down to the line, designated agent. I held my breath. Usually, it's the next of kin, the eldest son, David. That's what David thought. That's what Jessica was counting on. But Arthur knew David. He knew David was impulsive. He knew David had a gambling streak, even back then. I read the name typed in bold black letters. "I hereby appoint James Henderson, attorney at law, as my primary agent. In the event of his unavailability, I appoint Martha Lewis, neighbor, friend." I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding. David's name wasn't there. Nowhere. Not as a primary. Not as a backup. Arthur had explicitly excluded him from financial and medical control. There was even a small addendum, initials by Arthur, to protect the interests of my spouse from undue family pressure. I lowered the paper. Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of relief. Arthur was still protecting me. From the grave, from the garage floor, from the silence, he was still standing between me and the wolves. If David declared me incompetent, he wouldn't get the house. He would hand the keys to James Henderson, and if James was busy, he'd hand them to Martha. Martha, who knew about the books. Martha, who saw through the updates. David and Jessica were digging a hole to bury me in, but they didn't check the map. They were digging straight into a trap. I heard the front door open downstairs. They were back early. "Mom?" David's voice called out. "You awake?" I quickly slid the document back into the envelope and tucked it under my mattress. "I'm in bed, David," I called back. My voice sounded frail, wobbly. "Perfect. Did you have a nice time?" "It was fine," he shouted up the stairs. "Go to sleep. We have a big day tomorrow. Dr. Evans had a cancellation, so we're taking you in for that checkup at 10. I lay back against the pillows. A checkup. They were accelerating the timeline. They must have gotten another call from the bank tonight. They wanted a diagnosis. Tomorrow. I smiled at the ceiling. "Okay, David," I whispered. "Let's go to the doctor." I closed my eyes. I wasn't afraid of the doctor anymore, because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't the one who was going to lose everything tomorrow. The drive to Dr. Evans' office was suffocating. Jessica sat in the back with me, holding my hand. Her palm was clammy. "Now, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with fake honey. "Just be honest with the doctor. Tell him about the fog, about how you get confused in your own kitchen." I looked out the window. "The fog," I repeated softly. "Yes." David checked his rearview mirror. He looked sweaty. The foreclosure notice I saw last night was probably burning a hole in his mind. He needed this diagnosis today. He needed control of my assets today. We arrived at the clinic. In the waiting room, David tapped his foot, a rapid, erratic rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Jessica was texting furiously, probably to a realtor. I sat perfectly still, hands folded on my lap, clutching my purse. Inside that purse was a small voice recorder Arthur used to use for his site inspections. I had put fresh batteries in it this morning. It was running. "Mrs. Miller?" the nurse called. We filed into exam room B. It smelled of rubbing alcohol and latex. Dr. Evans walked in a moment later. He was a man of few words, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had treated Arthur's heart condition. He knew us. "Mary," he said warmly, "good to see you. Although I hear there are some concerns." Before I could open my mouth, Jessica jumped in. "Major concerns, doctor. Rapid decline. Just in the last week, she's become disoriented. She hallucinates. She talks to inanimate objects. She gets aggressive when we try to help." Dr. Evans looked at Jessica, then at David, and finally at me. "Aggressive?" he asked. "She yelled at us," David added, leaning forward. "About a painting. She was. Irrational, screaming that we were erasing her history. It was scary, Doc." I sat there, looking small. I let my shoulders slump. I just wanted Arthur back on the wall," I whispered. "See?" Jessica pointed a manicured finger at me. "Fixation. Obsession. She thinks the painting is him. She put it in the garage and wrapped it in a blanket like a baby." Dr. Evans frowned. He pulled his stool closer to me, ignoring them. "Mary, look at me." I looked up. My eyes were clear. "Do you know where you are?" he asked. "I am at 1402 Oak Street. Your office," I said. My voice was steady. "Do you know the date?" "It is Tuesday, October 24th. It is your wife's birthday tomorrow, isn't it? You usually close the office early." Dr. Evans blinked. A small smile touched his lips. "Yes, it is." He turned to David. "She seems quite oriented, David." "It comes and goes," David snapped. He stood up, pacing the small room. "That's the problem. She can fake it. But at home, she forgets where the dishes are. She forgets who owns the house. She thinks she's still in charge." "I see," Dr. Evans said. He wrote something down on his clipboard. He didn't look like he was writing a prescription for dementia medication. He looked like he was documenting behavior. David's behavior. "Mary," Dr. Evans asked gently, "why did you wrap the painting in a blanket?" I took a deep breath. I didn't look at David. I looked only at the doctor. "Because the garage floor is concrete, doctor, and it is damp. I didn't want the frame to warp. It was Arthur's favorite." "And the dishes?" he asked. They said you couldn't find the mugs. I couldn't, I said simply, because they were in the garbage can. The room went dead silent. Jessica gasped. That is a lie. See? Paranoia. She's making things up. I found the blue one, I continued, my voice still calm, still soft. The one with the bluebells. It was broken under the coffee grounds. Dr. Evans stopped writing. He looked at Jessica. His gaze was sharp now. You threw away her personal items? We were decluttering. Jessica shrilled. Her face was flushing red. We were helping. She's hoarding trash. It wasn't trash to me, I said. David stepped in, desperate. Doc, look, she's manipulating you. She needs professional care. We need you to sign the competency review so we can get her into Sunny Meadows. It's for her own safety. Dr. Evans closed the file. The snap was loud. He stood up. I've known your mother for 20 years, David. Grief is not dementia, and sadness is not incompetence. You're not listening, David shouted. Veins bulged in his neck. She is not fit to manage that estate. If she stays there, she'll ruin everything. Ruin everything for whom? Dr. Evans asked coldly. For her or for you? David froze. He realized, too late, that he had yelled. Jessica went pale. I am not signing any competency papers, Dr. Evans said firmly. In fact, Mary, I'm going to recommend a clean bill of health. You are stressed, yes, but you are perfectly lucid. He turned to David. And I suggest you lower your voice. This is a medical facility, not a courtroom. Let's go, David hissed. He grabbed my arm to pull me up. Ow, I said. Dr. Evans stepped forward. Let go of her arm, now. David let go as if burned. Fine, he spat. Come on, Mom. We walked out. David and Jessica were furious. They stormed ahead of me to the car. I walked slowly behind them. I reached into my purse and clicked the stop button on the recorder. I had the doctor's statement. I had David shouting about the estate. I had Jessica lying about the mugs, and I had Dr. Evans witnessing David's aggression. As I climbed into the back seat, David slammed the door. Unbelievable, he muttered to Jessica. He's an idiot. We'll find another doctor, someone who doesn't know her. We don't have time to find another doctor, Jessica whispered, panic edging into her voice. The bank called again while we were in there. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. They thought they had lost a battle. They didn't realize they had just given me the ammunition to win the war. Item 6. Recorded evidence of coercion and attempted medical fraud. Item 7. Witness testimony from Dr. Evans. The drive home was silent. But this time, I wasn't the one feeling suffocated. 2 days later, the house was full of strangers. David called it a housewarming party. Just a few friends, Mom, he said, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. He didn't look at me. To celebrate the renovations, try to be hospitable, or at least quiet. I wore my best navy dress, the one Arthur loved. I sat in the corner of the living room, in the wingback chair they hadn't managed to throw out yet. I watched. These weren't friends. Friends bring wine. Friends bring casseroles. Friends ask about your grandchildren. These people brought briefcases. They brought tape measures disguised as curiosity. They brought calculating eyes that scanned the crown molding and the floorboards. Great bones. I heard a man in a gray suit say to Jessica, he tapped the wall with a knuckle, "You'd have to gut the kitchen, obviously. Open this whole wall up." Exactly, Jessica purred. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car. She looked radiant. Desperate, but radiant. We've already cleared out most of the dated elements. It's a blank canvas. Dated elements. She meant me. A waiter passed by with a tray of shrimp. David had hired caterers. Using whose money? I wondered. Probably another credit card maxed out in my name, or a loan against a future they didn't own. I took a glass of sparkling water. I didn't drink it. I just held it, letting the condensation cool my palm. I watched David leading a couple toward the hallway. And this, he said, gesturing grandly, is the master suite wing. Huge potential. The current occupant is flexible. My hand tightened on the glass. I stood up. My knees were steady. I followed them, quietly. They went into Arthur's study. This was the one room David had promised not to touch. Dad's sanctuary, he had called it a week ago. Now, the door was wide open. Arthur's desk, the heavy mahogany one, was pushed against the wall. His books were gone. In the center of the room, on an easel, was a large architectural rendering, a blueprint. I stopped in the doorway. The blueprint showed a home theater. Where Arthur's desk stood, there was a popcorn machine. Where his bookshelves were, a wet bar. "It's a perfect footprint for entertainment," David was saying to the couple. "You knock out that load-bearing wall, put in a steel beam, and you double the space." "And the old lady?" the woman asked. She lowered her voice, but not enough. "Does she come with the house?" David laughed, a nervous, hollow sound. "Oh, Mom? No. She's moving to a facility next month. Sunny Meadows. It's all arranged. She's ready to go. She knows it's too much for her." The woman nodded sympathetically. "Poor thing. It's hard when they lose their grip." I stepped into the room. The floorboards creaked. David spun around. His face went from salesman smooth to sheet white in a second. "Mom," he stammered. I didn't see you there." The couple looked at me. The woman offered a pitying smile. "Hello, dear," she said, speaking slowly and loudly. "We were just admiring your lovely home." I didn't look at her. I looked at the blueprint. I looked at the empty shelves where Arthur's history books used to be. Then I looked at my son. "Sunny Meadows?" I asked softly. David stepped forward, blocking the couple's view of me. "Mom, why don't you go back to the living room, get some shrimp? We're discussing business." "Is that what this is?" I asked. "Business?" "David," Jessica appeared at the door, sensing the tension like a shark senses blood. She grabbed my arm. "Mom, come on. You're tired. Let's get you upstairs." "I am not tired," I said. "You're making a scene," Jessica hissed in my ear. Her nails dug into my skin. "Don't embarrass us. These people can solve all our problems." "Your problems," I corrected in my head. I looked around the room. There were 6 or 7 people now, drifting in, curious about the commotion. The man in the gray suit, the couple, the caterers. David looked at them, then at me. His eyes begged me to be silent, to be the good, invisible mother, to die quietly so he could live loudly. "Please," he mouthed. I looked at him, and for a split second, I felt that old instinct, the mother's instinct, to protect her child, to hide his mistakes, to smooth over the cracks. But then I looked at the empty wall where Arthur used to hang. I remembered the mugs in the trash. I remembered the dementia diagnosis they tried to buy. And I realized the boy I raised was gone. The man standing in front of me was a thief. I pulled my arm out of Jessica's grip. "I think," I said, my voice projecting clearly into the crowded hallway, "that there has been a misunderstanding." The room went silent. The music from the living room seemed to fade. "I think," I continued, "that before you discuss knocking down walls, you should probably speak to the owner." David froze. "Mom," he warned, "don't." "I'll be right back," I said to the guests. I smiled. It was the same smile I gave Dr. Evans. "I have something to show you, a different kind of blueprint." I turned and walked out of the study. I walked through the crowd of vultures. I headed straight for the garage. It was time to bring Arthur back to the party. I walked back into the house. The portrait of Arthur was heavy, heavier than I remembered, but my arms didn't shake. I carried him with both hands, the frame pressing against my chest like a shield. Under my arm, I clutched the manila envelope. The hallway was still crowded. The chatter died down instantly as I approached. I didn't stop. I walked straight into the study, past Jessica, past the caterers, past the man in the gray suit. David was still standing by the easel, a glass of wine halfway to his mouth. He lowered it slowly. His eyes went wide. "Mom," he whispered. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer him. I walked up to the easel where the blueprint of the home theater was displayed. With one swift motion, I knocked the blueprint onto the floor. It landed face down. Then, I lifted Arthur's portrait and set it onto the easel. The gold frame caught the light. Arthur's face, kind, strong, unyielding, looked out at the room. He was no longer staring at the garage floor. He was staring at his son. "This," I said, my voice clear and projecting to the back of the room, "is the architect." Jessica rushed forward, her heels clicking frantically on the hardwood. Okay, Mom is having an episode. David, help her to the car. Everyone, please excuse us. I am not having an episode, Jessica," I said. I didn't shout. I spoke with the icy precision of a schoolteacher correcting a slow student. And I am not going to the car. I turn to the guests. My son tells me he has been discussing business with you. He is offering you a blank canvas, a renovation opportunity. The man in the gray suit nodded uncertainly. He mentioned the deed transfer is pending. Ah, I said. The deed. I opened the manila envelope. I pulled out the document Arthur had signed. There seems to be a confusion. David believes he has the authority to sell this home because he believes I am, what was the word? Declining. I held up the paper. This is a durable power of attorney, notarized, active. David reached for it. Mom, give me that. I pulled it back sharply. Read the bold print, David. He froze. He squinted at the paper. It says, James Henderson, he stammered. That's right, I said. Not you, not Jessica. If I am ever declared incompetent, which Dr. Evans assured me today I am not control of this house, does not go to you. It goes to my lawyer. The room was deathly quiet. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. So, I continued, turning back to the guests. If you are here to buy this house, you are negotiating with a tenant, not the owner. Tenant? Jessica screeched. Her mask of sophistication cracked completely. We live here. We take care of you. You live here rent-free, I corrected her. Then I reached into the envelope again. I pulled out the credit card statement I had taken from the trash in her office. And the foreclosure notice for their New York apartment. I didn't hand them to the guests. That would be classless. I handed them to David. And judging by these, I said softly, just loud enough for the room to hear, you aren't selling my house because it's too big for me. You are selling it because you have nowhere else to go. David looked at the papers. His face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of ash and crimson. The foreclosure notice shook in his hand. The man in the gray suit cleared his throat. I think, he said, buttoning his jacket, we've seen enough. He turned to his wife. Let's go. Wait, Jessica pleaded, grabbing his arm. It's a misunderstanding. We can explain. The financing is just temporary. Good luck, Mrs. Miller, the man said to me. He ignored Jessica completely. He walked out. The other guests followed, like dominoes falling. The caterers looked at each other, then started quietly packing up the shrimp. Within 2 minutes, the room was empty. The front door clicked shut for the final time. It was just the three of us. And Arthur. David stood in the middle of the room. The foreclosure notice crumpled in his fist. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The arrogance was gone. The posture was gone. He looked like a little boy who had broken a vase and realized he couldn't glue it back together. Jessica sank onto the sofa, my wingback chair. She put her head in her hands. You ruined it, she sobbed. You ruined everything. Do you know how close we were? We just needed the deposit. I walked over to the easel. I adjusted Arthur's portrait slightly, making sure it was perfectly straight. I didn't ruin anything, Jessica, I said. I turned to face them. I just turned on the lights. David looked up at me. His eyes were wet. Mom, he croaked. We were drowning. I know, I said. And instead of asking for a life raft, you tried to drown me too. I walked to the door of the study. I paused, my hand on the frame. You have guests coming tomorrow, I said. David blinked. What? Who? Movers, I said. Or the sheriff. You can choose. I walked out. I went to the kitchen, took a fresh glass from the cupboard, one of the ugly white ones. It didn't matter anymore, and poured myself some water. It tasted like victory. The next morning, the house didn't smell of coffee. It smelled of cardboard and defeat. I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea from a mismatched mug I had rescued from the back of the cupboard. Through the open door, I watched them. There were no movers. They couldn't afford them. It was just David and Jessica dragging suitcases down the stairs. The sound was heavy thud, 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 like a heartbeat that was slowly stopping. Jessica wasn't wearing her silk pajamas or her designer heels. She was wearing gray sweatpants and a sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. The consultant facade had melted away, leaving behind a tired, angry woman who had bet on the wrong horse. She walked past the kitchen without looking at me. She was carrying the espresso machine. Leave it, I said. She stopped. Her knuckles went white on the chrome handle. We bought this, she snapped. Her voice was raspy. You bought it with the joint credit card David opened in my name, I said calmly. I checked the statement this morning, so technically, I bought it. She stood there for a moment, hating me, hating the fact that I knew. Then she slammed the machine down on the counter. It rattled. She stormed out to the car. David came down next. He was carrying a box of his clothes. He looked 10 years older than he did yesterday. The swagger was gone. The man of the house posture was gone. He stopped in the doorway of the kitchen. He looked at the empty counter where he used to make his protein shakes. He looked at the window where the morning sun hit the floor. "Mom?" he said. His voice was small, broken. I didn't look up from my tea. "The boxes are in the hall, David. Don't forget your golf clubs. We have nowhere to go," he said. "Jessica's parents won't take us. The apartment in the city is locked up. We're going to a motel." He let that hang in the air. A bait, a hook. He was waiting for me to say, "Oh no, stay here. We'll figure it out." He was waiting for the mother who used to fix his scraped knees, to fix his financial ruin. I looked at him then. "A motel sounds like a good place to start," I said. "How can you be so cold?" he whispered. "I'm your son." "You are," I agreed. "And yesterday, you were ready to sign a paper declaring that your mother was mentally incompetent, just so you could pay off your gambling debts." He flinched. "I wasn't. I wouldn't have actually put you in the home. I just needed the leverage." "That is worse, David," I said. "You were willing to destroy my dignity to save your lifestyle." I stood up. I walked over to the hook by the back door. "The keys," I said. "House and garage." He hesitated. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key ring. The brass key to the front door, the one Arthur had given him when he turned 16, glinted in the light. He held it out. His hand shook. I took it. The metal was warm from his pocket. I dropped it into my apron pocket. "What will you do?" he asked. "This house is too big for one person." "It is," I said, "but it is just the right size for my memories. And unlike you, my memories don't try to steal from me." Jessica honked the horn from the driveway, a long, impatient blast. David looked at the door, then back at me. "I'm sorry, Mom. About Dad's picture. I really am." "I know," I said, and I meant it. I knew he was sorry, but he was sorry because he got caught. He was sorry because the plan failed. He wasn't sorry for the pain he caused. He was sorry for the consequences he was now facing. "Go," I said. "She's waiting." He turned and walked out. I followed him to the door. I watched him load the last box into the trunk of the BMW, a car I knew the bank would be coming for next week. He got into the driver's seat. He didn't look back. The engine started. The car reversed out of the driveway, over the spot where Arthur used to park his truck, and turned onto the street. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. The silence rushed back in. But this time, it wasn't the hollow, echoing silence of an empty stage. It was the heavy, peaceful silence of a library, of a church, of a home that had survived a storm. I closed the front door. I locked the deadbolt. Click. I locked the handle. Click. Then I walked into the living room. Arthur was back on the easel. The red, postmodern painting was leaning against the trash can by the curb. I sat down in my wingback chair. I was alone. I had no son in the guest room. I had no daughter-in-law in the kitchen. But for the first time in months, the air in the house was clean. I looked at Arthur. "We did it," I whispered. The house creaked the third floorboard on the stairs. It sounded like an answer. It took 3 days to get the smell of Jessica's Ocean Breeze plug-ins out of the drapes. I opened every window. I let the autumn wind sweep through the hallway, chasing out the stale air of ambition and deceit. I didn't hire a handyman. I did it myself. I dragged the step stool, the sturdy oak one, back into the living room. I took down the flimsy gray curtains that looked like storm clouds. I folded them neatly and put them in a donation bag. I am not vindictive, but I am also not tasteless. Then, I went to the attic. I found the box marked, "Living Room, Winter." I pulled out the deep burgundy velvet drapes. They smelled of cedar and memory. When I hung them up, the room seemed to sigh. The echo vanished. The warmth returned. Next came the mugs. I went to the store and bought a new set, not white cylinders. I bought ceramic ones, glazed in earthy greens and blues, imperfect, heavy. Mugs that ask you to hold them with both hands. I filled the cupboard. I put the broken Bluebell mug on the top shelf, glued back together. I wouldn't drink from it again, but I wouldn't throw it away. It was a reminder that things can break, but they don't have to disappear. Finally, the portrait. Arthur had been sitting on the easel for 2 days, watching me clean. "All right, old man," I said to him. "Time to go back to work." Lifting him was harder than it used to be. My shoulders ached, but I climbed the stool. I found the hook, the one David hadn't bothered to remove. I lifted the heavy gold frame. My arms trembled. "Steady," I whispered. "Steady." The wire caught the hook. I let go slowly. He held. I stepped down and backed away. Arthur was back above the fireplace. He looked down at the room, at the velvet curtains, at the rug I had unrolled, at the wingback chair. His smile seemed different today. Not amused, proud. The doorbell rang. I didn't jump. I wasn't afraid of who it might be anymore. It was Martha. She didn't have a casserole this time. She had a bottle of wine. "I saw the BMW leave," she said, standing on the porch. "And I saw the curtains go back up." "Come in, Martha." We sat in the living room. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across the floor, the same floor Arthur and I had laid. Martha poured 2 glasses. "Have you heard from them?" she asked. "David sent a text," I said. "He asked if I could forward his mail to a P.O. box." "That's it?" "That's it." Martha swirled her wine. "Are you going to change the will?" I looked at the fire I had just lit. Real wood this time. The crackle was comforting. "I already called James Henderson," I said. "We're setting up a trust. The house stays in the family. Eventually. But only for grandchildren. David can live here if he visits, but he will never own the deed." Martha nodded. "Smart." "It's not about punishment," I said. "It's about protection. He needs to learn to build his own roof before he tries to tear down mine." We sat in silence for a while. It was a good silence. The kind of silence you share with someone who knows your history without needing footnotes. "You're alone in a big house, Mary," Martha said softly. "Are you going to be okay?" I looked around. I looked at the scratches on the doorframe. I looked at the "Arthur Loves Mary" hidden in the wall. I looked at the empty space where the home theater was supposed to be. "I'm not alone," I said. I took a sip of wine. "I'm with myself, and for a long time, I think I missed her." Martha smiled and clinked her glass against mine. "Welcome back, Mary." That night, after Martha left, I didn't go upstairs immediately. I walked through every room. I turned off the lights, one by one. Click, kitchen, click, dining room, click, study. I stood in the dark foyer, listening to the house settle. The third stair creaked. The wind rattled the pane in the den. The refrigerator hummed. It wasn't a modern house. It wasn't market ready. It wasn't a blank canvas. It was full. It was scarred. It was mine. I walked up the stairs, my hand sliding along the banister. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. I wasn't waiting for an apology that might never come. I was going to sleep in my own bed, under my own roof, knowing exactly who I was. The ghost on the wall was safe, and so was the woman living in the house.